Hi, Marisa, can you hear me? Marisa, are you on mute? Can we just make sure your audio is working?
Can you hear me, Randy?
Yeah, I can hear you, Kathy. Marisa, I don't know. Can we just make sure that we can hear you talk? Marisa, is your audio working?
Yes, I believe.
Okay, good. Yeah, we can hear you.
I just muted myself.
Okay, that's okay. We'll get started in a second here.
Randy, Counselor Grace doesn't think her link worked.
Well, she's here now though, right?
I just saw her note under the chat.
Perhaps Matt can send out the links again.
Oh, there she is.
Hi, Randy. Yeah, Counselor Grice is in.
There we go. Excellent. All right, so we'll get started with the sort of the first wave. The plan is to do the presentation at 5 and 6. So I just want to thank everyone for attending the virtual public information meeting for the proposed temporary use permit at 511 Church Avenue for cold weather shelter. We would have liked to have this meeting in person, but obviously COVID restrictions do not allow this at this time. So the goal of this meeting is to receive feedback from the public, which staff will summarize and present to council at the December 14th council meeting. Council members are also part of this Zoom meeting to listen to the feedback from the public. It looks like Councillor Grice is here thus far. So just some points here. We need to keep the focus on the discussion at the proposed location, as it's the subject of the public information meeting. Staff have been actively reaching out to service clubs and private property owners about other possible locations and are waiting to hear back. So we have Marisa Tarr here from Desert Sun, who will be presenting information about the proposed cold weather shelter. And as I mentioned, it'll be at 5 and 6 tonight. Just so the participants are aware, you're currently all muted and do not have video. At the end of the presentation, participants will have an opportunity to virtually raise their hand, in which we will unmute you so you have a chance to provide comment or ask a question of ourselves, staff and Marisa. Before you speak, it would be helpful if you provided your name and address for context. You'll have 3 minutes to speak, so just to give everyone a chance to speak. And the raise hand option is at the top right of your screen for Apple devices. I'm not sure about others, but you'll see it should be there. If you click on your name, even under the participants list, there may be an option to raise your hand, and it's a virtual raise your hand. So anyone that's used to Zoom will know what I'm talking about. And then for those that are calling in, so there may be some people that are calling in, we'll also provide you an opportunity to speak without virtually raising your hand. Also, so people are aware, the materials are all posted on our website along with an online survey. Hard copy materials are available at Town Hall, along with a printed feedback form for pickup and drop off at Town Hall. All feedback will need to be submitted by next Wednesday. That way we have time to prepare a summary for council. And with that, I'll pass it over to Marisa and she can introduce yourself. I should have said, sorry, my name's Randy. I'm the Director of Development Services, Randy Hula, for the Town of Oliver, and our CAO, Kathy Cowan, is here as well. So with that, Marisa, if you click on share screen, we'll be able to see your PowerPoint. Thank you. And thank you everyone for attending.
Okay, well, you know what? That's gonna take me a moment because I assume that you guys are we're gonna share my screen. So just give me 1 minute so that I can find this, and then I will get to that.
It'll be a big green button there.
Yes, I
It says
know
share.
know exactly how to do it. It's just
Oh,
that I
okay.
wasn't, I didn't have my presentation ready, but I do know. So now
Oh,
I
great. Okay.
will get it for you. Desktop,
Thank you for doing that.
no problem. Mm, Where did it go? So actually, I can multitask. So while I find it and bring it up here, I will just start by talking a little bit about why shelter is needed in Oliver. So, as you might know, all of us, Desert Sun Counseling, do work with a lot of vulnerable people in Osoyoos, Oliver, and then we also work in close partnerships with Interior Health and other organizations that also deal with vulnerable people. And so last year through the year, we kind of kept score of how many people we needed housing through the year between ourselves, as well as Interior Health and other organizations. And we counted that there were more than 50 people in Oliver that was struggling with homelessness. And you know, a lot of what I've seen on social media, etc., was that there's a lot of fear around who these people are, and you know that they come from other towns, and actually they don't. A lot of them live right amongst us, and for some other reason fall on hard times, and you know, people lose their jobs. Sometimes, you know, we deal with a pregnant woman whose partner leaves her during pregnancy, and now she finds herself at risk of homelessness. We deal with seniors who have a falling out with their children who they live with, and then, you know, have nowhere to go. So in the last in the last couple of months, I've kept real good count of who we're dealing with. None of the people who we helped was actually addicted to drugs. You know, all of these people are right now living in motels or other accommodation in the towns with everyone else. So they are not problem people. They are people who just need our help. Some people obviously do struggle with addictions. You know, but those are not typically people that we at Desert Sun deal with. So we only are looking at 8 beds. So those 8 beds will easily be filled by people who are not struggling with addiction. And not all homeless people are drug addicts. And we have to remember, even the people who are drug addicts, they are somebody's child. They are somebody's brother, sister, somebody's mother or father. And so we can choose to just ignore them and ignore their suffering, or we can choose to extend a helping hand to them and to help them access services. And by that, I mean, at Desert Sun specifically, we don't like to give people just handouts. We actually would like to give people a hand up. So that means we help them to get back to being contributing citizens in society. And it is our aim to always break the cycle of homelessness. So we don't want people to continue living on the street. We actually provide people support so that they can move up on the housing continuum. And by that, we mean we give them shelter where they're fully supported, where they're fully funded, and then we move them on to transitional housing once we have helped them access assistance, whether that is government assistance or disability assistance, and we help them secure a job. And then our goal is to get them into independent living again. So it's certainly not our aim to have a shelter where people can continually struggle with homelessness. We also have many people amongst us who live outside. They like living outside. They have jobs. In the summer, they live in the mountains. I'm not sure exactly why, but in the winter months, once it gets cold, they struggle because it's cold and they struggle to survive. And that is why we're looking at this cold weather shelter specifically as well. And a lot of people in the winter time, they live year round in pickers cabins and in housing that is really not suitable for winter living, because sometimes the heating costs for their housing is so expensive that they have to choose between housing, so rent, and heating their place, or food. So it's not as simple as people think that we're going to have a homeless shelter for people who are struggling with addiction and mental health. That we are looking at having a high barrier shelter. So that means we're not going to admit people who are actively using or are struggling with alcohol. and as at Desert Sun, we also run a women's shelter. We are very aware of which clients we can accommodate and who we cannot. And if we feel we cannot accommodate a client needs, we will send them to and refer them to another agency that we know can better deal with their problems or with their specific struggles. So we also are planning to have very specific rules in place for the shelter. Which means that we're not going to allow people to loiter outside of the shelter. In actual fact, we will have security in place, and one of the rules of the shelter will be that people will not be allowed to congregate outside within 1 or 2 blocks from the shelter. So in our application to BC Housing, we will include in our budget money for security. So, that was another concern that I've heard from a lot of people, that they're concerned that they'll be loitering, lots of people outside. And that's certainly not what we are wanting and anticipating. We will also be placing a CCAN on the property, and there'll be very specific rules as to what people can store in the CCAN. So people will only be able to have one bag of belongings and one bicycle, and that bicycle has to be registered right when they put the bicycle in there. And that way, and clients will only be able to access the CCAN with a staff member. So there won't be a come and go in the CCAN as they please, but it will actually be supervised. The same with the shelter will be locked every day, every night from 10 o'clock in the evening until 7 in the morning. So there will be no people coming and going during that time. And if people need to have a smoke break or something, they will have to have a staff member going outside supervising whatever they're doing outside. And I've also heard concerns that people are concerned that there'll be a safe injection site that is going to be proposed for this project. And that is also definitely not our plan, and not something that we are considering. So we will operate the shelter. It is a cold weather shelter, so that means it will only operate from November 1st until March 31st. And that's only if the permit is approved. And as you know, November 1st has come and gone. So whether we will be able to operate the shelter at all this year, I'm not sure, but we are going to try our best. The operations of the shelter will be overseen by a stakeholder committee or advisory committee, and that committee will consist of community members, Town of Oliver, and other members of the community. And so, as Randy said initially, at the moment, the shelter is proposed for 511 Church Avenue in Oliver at the United Church. And that is the permit that we are requesting input on. And that permit is needed from the town of Oliver to operate the shelter. So while the clients are living in the shelter, you might wonder what will they do all day. So there will be a specific plan in place for clients to for staff and clients. So staff will work with clients to come up with goals for their shelter stay. And they will also work with clients to connect them with appropriate services. And there will be access to Work BC and other work agencies to try to secure them employment. And then we will also work with them to try and find long-term housing. We will also work with them to, with Service BC, to make sure that they have proper ID, because a lot of people, vulnerable people, we find they don't have the necessary documentation to access, income assistance and other services like that. Every day there will be 3 meals provided to the people who are living in the shelter, and they will also have free access to the laundry services. There will be no visitors allowed, so there won't be coming and going of friends of the people who are staying in the shelter. And we have measured the location out, and it can easily accommodate 10 beds. But we are requesting that we are only going to operate the shelter initially for 8 clients, and we will regard 2 beds as overflow. And the safety of our staff, as well as our clients and the neighbors, will definitely be the top priority of the shelter. Just to give you a little bit of background about Desert Sun. Desert Sun Counseling has been operating and delivering services in the town of Osoyoos and Oliver since 1998. We provide counseling, we provide affordable housing, we have a safe home. Basically, we provide cradle to grave services, meaning that we also have parenting programs for people with young kids. We provide prenatal services. So we have staff that can deal with people of all ages, and they are trained. We are looking at staffing the shelter 24/7 with 2 staff members. 2 staff members will be on site at all times. There will also be security. Staff will be trained in dealing with vulnerable people. And as you might have guessed from what I just told you about Desert Sun, all of our staff is very adept at dealing with vulnerable people. They will also be trained in first aid, medical emergencies, and all of our staff at Desert Sun is trained in dealing with overdoses, and the staff who work at the shelter will also be trained in dealing with overdoses. We've never had to deal with an overdose, but we always steer on the and we are always cautious when it comes to the safety of our clients and our staff. We will need funding from BC Housing to be able to provide the cold shelter. And the funding that we will receive from BC Housing, we will pay staffing, the rent of the facility, all the startup costs, which will include renovations, all the COVID-19 PPE. So that would be our next step after, if we receive approval for a temporary permit, would be to get funding from BC Housing. And at the same time, within the next couple of months, we will be looking at, in actual fact, I believe Kathy is already going to put the ad in the newspaper next week for the advisory committee. And we have already shoulder tapped a couple of people in the community to sit on the advisory committee. And this advisory committee will then be alongside of Desert Sun, be in charge of the operations of the facility. So it is important to know that the funding for BC Housing has not been secured, and so we cannot operate or start the shelter without the necessary funding, of course. And so myself and the town of Oliver staff have been working on the terms of reference for the shelter, as well as the policies and procedures. And so we will wait for the advisory committee to be in place before we will approve any of these policies and procedures, but we at least have some starting point to start from. So yes, so that's basically, and I also just would like to note that there will be very specific cold shelter rules, and also every inhabitant of the shelter, so every client of the shelter will have to sign a good neighbor agreement. All these documents have been submitted to the town, and we have worked alongside each other to get these documents ready, and then they will be proposed to the advisory committee, and then we will go from there. Yes, so that's where I am with the end of my presentation, and I will, while we, I will make sure that at 6 o'clock I will have it lined up and ready to go.
Thank you, Marisa. So with that, we'll move to some questions and comments. So thank you for everyone for attending, as we really appreciate it. So I'll move to Michael Guthrie. Just a sec, Michael. I'm going to just allow you to talk here. Michael, are you there? Just your name and your address would be awesome. I believe you're muted still, Michael.
Okay, are we okay?
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, you're ahead. Go ahead. Thank you.
I'm just a local resident. I don't really have my wife and I don't really have a horse in this race. We live kind of in that area of town, but not close enough to I think it would provide any problems for us. But we do have friends that live over there, and I think maybe we've got the cart before the horse, because it sounds to me like we're talking about getting all the permitting in place, which then at that point kind of takes away from the town and or the local residents from having the ability to, at that point, approve or disapprove of whatever is going to go on from that point forward. So it seems to me like the permitting probably ought to be contingent on a number of different items, one of which is the financials. I mean, that's usually in a project, that's usually the first thing that comes about is, can we make this thing work? So I don't know where the money, I understand that where a good portion of the money is coming from, but I don't see where it's all going to. I'd be a heck of a lot more comfortable if we had some sort of prospectus, a pro forma prospectus to show us where that money's going to. How much? What's the profit margin? Is there any profit? What happens if there's shortcomings? One of the things that I've run into here recently has been I've been in Victoria recently. And I don't know if you've been in Victoria lately, you know that there's a heck of a homeless problem there. And last winter when I was over there, it was a mess. And the people who live there believe it's a mess. They're buying hotels to house these people in, and they're purchasing them cell phones, and oh my God, they're buying alcohol, cigarettes, and dope for them. And yet they're still all over the streets. It is an absolute embarrassment to be in our province's capital, just to be honest with you at times. It's horrible. And so my concern is what happens if we end up attracting people, because that's what they're doing in Victoria. They're making it so comfortable that they're attracting people from all over the place to come out there and, get with their hands out. What happens if that occurs here? Is the city going to be on the hook for things like liability? If somebody gets hurt, if somebody has a drug overdose, or if a pregnant woman shows up and she's got 4 kids in tow and you got no place to put them, who's going to pay for that hotel and for how long? And who's going to support these kids and put them through, put them back in school and put them in clothes and, one thing after another. You're talking about things like allowing people with dogs in there. Well, I can't think of a better way to create difficulties inside that facility than you have dogs, cats, kids, cell phones, and then, people who generally, and I'm not trying to pull everybody into this, but generally speaking, people who live like this sometimes live like this by choice. Not all of them, certainly. And I don't think anybody of us who live up in this area are against the idea of having a homeless shelter. We just don't think this is the right spot. I mean, we hear things about, tonight I've heard this story about security. Okay, what does security mean? I looked at the perspective, some of your presentation materials, and the security thing was talking about, people hanging around up to 2 blocks away. And has that all been rolled into the cost of this thing? And not to mention the fact that there's a bunch of people, and I know a number of them that are vulnerable people who live in this area. By vulnerable, I mean people who are 70, 75 years old and who are up there wringing their hands right now. 1, because they don't know what Zoom even is. And 2, it's because they just don't know what's going to happen here. And they have heard and they have seen on TV what's going on in Victoria and places like that. And there's just a number of different questions. And I think we're pushing this thing a whole lot faster than what it needs to go. What is the rush? We're into the winter already. If everything went well, I can't imagine this thing being up and running by February, even as it is now.
Hey, Michael.
One of the things that I've seen, what you said earlier.
Michael, hey, Michael.
Yeah.
We're going to have to give others a chance to speak as well. I don't know if Marisa can help answer some of the points you brought up in terms of the finances and the funding, and a bit of the conversation about the cart before the horse. And if Marisa could sort of touch on that.
Okay.
Yes. So to submit an application to BC Housing for funding, you obviously will need to have a budget. So to come up with a budget, you have to have a space, so that some of the costs, like rent, how much is renovations going to cost you, how many people are you going to house, and then of course from that you can figure out how many staff you have to hire. So yes, so it's not that's just the normal process. Is you first have to find a location, and once you have a location, that's when you apply for funding. Funding comes from BC Housing. Schooling in British Columbia is free. So I heard you talking about how do we get women and children fed and clothed, and Desert Sun actually already does that. We have a safe home where so we deal already with women and children who are fleeing abuse, and there's funding available for that. And food, we provide them with food. So we already doing all of that, and we know how to access the necessary funding for this. I also saw that somebody was asking questions about, can we please clarify it, as it was women, then 50 weren't homeless or on the street. Yes, these people. So I just want to clarify for the person who asked that question, that people were homeless. So we had to find them places to live. So it's not that they aren't homeless and we're just finding, they are homeless and they're looking for a place to stay. And then there was the question, some might have addictions and not with addictions. Well, what I was trying to say is none of the people that we have dealt with in the last year struggled with addictions at all. They were homeless due to things that happened to them in their life in the last year. So crisis, all kinds of things happen to people. People lose their jobs, and then next thing their wife leaves them, and then next thing they have nowhere to go. And people, when a crisis like that happens to some people, they become well, and they are not sure how to navigate them. They have nowhere to go. So yes, just to clarify that question as well.
Thank you, Marisa. Let's move to Jay Robinson. Hey, Jay, can you hear us?
I can.
Yeah, we can hear you, Jay. Go ahead.
So I shared the property line. We're beautiful 6242 Kootenai Street. I guess my top three questions: building, which would be, I don't know, about 7 years for this, and we're going to renovate it. Purchase the house. We had a meeting with it, and they said that we could keep that property. So I'm wondering if the church is now buying that property from us. Cost is it going to be, because all of our landscaping lines and electrical lines and other run under made, again, to separate the properties at whose cost that becomes. And then the fencing proposal only goes for about 40% of the property line, not 100% of the property line, Randy. And after the fire, our dog run in area is now insecure. And then finally, maybe more of a question for the temporary questions that are coming up in the
Hey, Jay,
chat.
hey, Jay,
Um,
you're cutting
trying to
out
get-
quite a
yep.
bit, Jay. I don't know.
Oh,
I don't
sorry.
know whether that's just on my end, but
Can you hear me now?
it's sort of cutting in and out.
You there?
Yeah, hey. Hey, Marisa, are you having issues hearing
No,
Jay?
it's so.
I can't hear him at all. It's like there's a feedback or something.
Sorry, Jay. Are you able, is Erika on this call as well? I thought I saw her name. Are you able to try to talk from that
Okay,
line?
is it better now? No, it's okay.
Sorry, the beauties of Zoom here. Just try again, Jay. Sorry.
Okay. Am I there now? Is it better?
A little bit, yeah.
Randy, can you hear me now?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so and my last question is, we've arbitrarily chosen a partner to run on this. My understanding of public with Ms. Tar, advisor plus security, over a 3-year project, knowing that expenditure would probably come close over 3 years to $1 million. Typically, a capital project like that with government funding has the ability to be sent out to vendors and bid against. And I'm just curious why the church and Desert Sun have been packaged together as one package without any public consortium. I know when we talked with OIB, the chief isn't in support, and he signed our petition that he feels that, again, like Mike said there, which was well spoken, cart before the horse.
Okay. I don't know if we kind of heard some of it there, but I don't know, Jay, if you can type some of your questions as well. But I know the last bit, perhaps Kathy, our CEO, could speak about the partnership with Desert Sun and how that came about, and then the church location, perhaps.
No, that would be good, because I've looked at the resume, and unfortunately, Ms. Tar nor her team have run a shelter before. So I'm just curious again how we've packaged this package together as a neat little bow around it. And the confidence seems low.
Okay. Yeah, no, I appreciate that question, Jay. Thanks. Ms. Cowan, are you able to speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I can speak to that. Can you hear me? Okay. When we looked at this through the strategic plan, we reached out to all the service clubs and agencies in the community to see who would be interested in starting the discussions around a cold shelter. And we also started looking around for properties. And we did reach out to, I think I'm repeating myself because I think I've told Jay this already once before, but I'll say it again, that we reached out to a number of people. Council feels that in our community, the Desert Sun is the appropriate agency to assist in providing this type of a service to our community, because they do work with a number of vulnerable people already within our communities and outside of our communities. So council they're very supportive of working and wanting to form this sort of partnership in providing this service. So that's where Desert Sun came into it. We approached them and they said yes, they would be very interested in assisting in this and running the program. With regards to properties, we did look at a number of properties. We looked at possibly putting ATCO trailers on a piece of our property for a time being, but the cost of that would be quite onerous. So that wasn't something that would be viable to go forward with. We did look at the Portuguese Club, but the Parks and Recreation are currently using that to run programs out of it. We did also talk to a couple, well, one church, the Alliance Church, and they don't have a building per se. They have land, but they don't have a building. So that wasn't going to work for us as well. And then we touched base with the United Church, and they agreed to have a conversation with us. And then they felt that they wanted to give back to our community and also help these vulnerable individuals. And so they indicated that they would talk to their board to see if they would participate and provide the area. Does that help you, Jay?
Yes and no. I've read the notes, so unfortunately, I don't feel the comments you've made align with the public accessibility notes. So until I could see those, I can't comment on that. What I have seen of the notes and been to the meetings, in fact, it was I looked before at trailers, and we've gone and actually started to talk with the different property owners. We've talked with the provincial government people, and we've looked at other organizations have offered to reach out. And like I say, I guess I'm just at odds. I believe in the solution. I just feel it's cart before the horse.
It was council's decision to work with Desert Sun.
Thank you, Jay. We'll move to KRJ. Or did you have a response quick, Jay?
No.
Okay, we'll move to KR. I'm not sure if you could state your name and your location, that would be helpful. KR, go ahead.
Hi, I'm actually Kim.
Kim,
and
perfect.
I actually live on the other side of the church. So I'm at 6274. And so I was not approached by anybody, although there was things that were written in here stating that there was people that were talked to by community people that said that there was people they talked to in the community. It's only neighbors that has spoken to us about any of this. It was only just a notification that went up on this church, and that's how we found out. And then talking to our other neighbors as well. I guess concerns for our side of this is that being new to Oliver, moving here there's 100-year-old building here. And now you're going to be looking at, I guess, taking down maybe part of that rock wall, doing whatever you're going to be doing into this building. Also, you just talked about smoking on the grounds. Well, so then if that's going to be a publicly funded, I'm not even sure if you can even do that if within 10 meters of a publicly funded, but I don't know. The other thing is that if this is a not-for-profit, don't get me wrong, you know what? We do have to absolutely look out for each other. That's not the issue here. I think it's the issue of the location of this. I guess the talk is that if there's 50 youth and then 30 to 40 non-youth, that's almost 90 people. And then I guess that there's 8 beds now. I think there's a bigger picture here, and maybe it needs to look at something that's more not for just in from the cold type of a deal, and maybe something that is more permanent housing, and maybe something that could be more township owned as well too. Something that maybe can, all of us can maybe sort of help in and pitch in as well too. If there's no drugs or anything on site, then why would it be needed for staff to be having to be taught and trained in all of that. That kind of doesn't put the people in the community at ease. It's a bit of a saying one thing and doing of another, and that's a bit worrisome when there's a lot of seniors around here that have those concerns. That's some of the very first concerns that had come up to us. I'm not sure you can actually lock that facility at night. I don't think you can lock people in either as well too. There's no emergency physician at the hospital at night. Everybody would have to come over from Penticton if there's an emergency situation as well. And then now we have our shelter in place from our Ministry of Health that have been orders that have come in now. So how would we even go about that when we have people that were coming in here? I'm just wondering if there's other things that need to be addressed right now. I mean, it just seems very disorganized as far as what I'm wondering. And the good neighbor agreement, I'd like to see what that looks like as well too.
Perfect. Thank you for your comments, Kim. Marisa, do you have any?
Yes, I
Any
just would
thoughts
like
to
to
that?
say, our staff, every one of our staff, and like I said, we have never had to use our overdose treatment. Even myself, who don't work with clients personally or on a one-to-one basis, we are all trained in dealing with drug overdoses, because I believe that that is good practice. Just like we all have first aid courses, we've all participated in first aid and we have our first aid certificates. I believe that that having qualifications and being able to deal with overdoses in today's day and age is necessary. And that is only doing due diligence to do that. Also, I am not sure where she gets her numbers about 50 youth and 40 other homeless people. That was not, I did not refer to those numbers. So yeah, so that the other things that she talked about, smoking policy, well, obviously that will be we will follow the policies of Interior Health. There's health and safety policies for staff. There's health and safety policies around where people can and cannot smoke, and those will be the ones that we will follow as well. So, and the Good Neighborhood Agreement, I believe I have sent that document on to the town of Oliver, so they do have it, and I believe they were going to post it on their website, or and actually it will be posted on Desert Sun's website. It's also important to remember that these documents all have to be agreed and looked at by the advisory committee. So that these are just the draft documents and the preliminary documents.
Thank you, Marisa. We'll move to Erika, and then if Kim has a follow-up question, once everyone spoke, then she can contribute again. So Erika, I'll just, can you hear us there? Hopefully your connection is a little bit better than Jay's.
Yeah, Jay's not here. Just let me press mute on the speaker. Okay, so my questions, and I won't speak to Jay's because I think he has them in the comments there, but my comments are, one, there's obviously potential or you wouldn't be doing overdose training, first of all. Second of all, you talk about having somebody, a staff member, go outside and monitor people for smoking and be with them at all times, but then there's no risk. So it contradicts kind of why you'd send somebody out with them to smoke. The other thing is the fact that these people are in hotels already. So you're painting a picture that we're going to take these people in, a woman that's pregnant. I can tell you a woman is not going to go into a shelter with unpredictable men in that building. So the picture that you're painting is kind of inaccurate. And You're not taking people off the street, because the people that you're talking about are already in a hotel or in a, in a cabin, or so it's not the people that are on the street, which I have spoke to, and I'm not sure if you guys have, but you are right that they are minimalist and they don't want to be in a shelter, and that includes being in the winter, because I've gone down and talked to 4 of them now, and that's inaccurate, again, information. What I don't appreciate is the fact that you guys have made this plan and you did not include any of the neighbors in it. It's been in the minutes since January of 2020. You had a conversation in August about it when there was an agenda on that. I find out from a trick-or-treater and the neighbors don't even know about it. And then yet you guys don't even know that there's an emergency egress that's going to be into my front yard. And now we're talking about a fence that's only 40% of my yard. You guys haven't even come into my yard to check that that's not going to be helpful, because the rest of my yard can still be exposed to the church. And so is the C-can being put right next door. Yeah, sure, it's an eyesore to the street, but you're putting it next to my house. So every time I come into my kitchen, that's what I'm going to see every morning. And it's next to where my dog run. Now, how safe is that? And on top of this, I have spoke to a lawyer, so I would be in question of who I would be addressing our case action to. But the question is, at this stage, is the safety. And if you can't 100% guarantee that there's going to be safety for the neighbors, safety for my kids, safety for the old lady that lives behind me, then this should not even be a consideration.
Thank you, Erika, for your submission. Just to speak to the fence part, my understanding from going out on site is that the fence for most of the property is existing, and the idea was that the common yard, which is the biggest well, I don't mean to say the biggest concern of yours, but a major concern is the shared yard and the emergency exit going into that common yard, right? So by installing a fence along that boundary and providing a proper exit through the wall, that would help alleviate some of that.
But it won't, because if you actually come onto my patio in the back here, it's a 3-foot fence, and it opens up to the whole common area that you're blocking half a way of it off. So, and the fence that we're talking about is already burnt. That's going beside the C-can. So it's structurally, it's not even great because of the fire from the church already. So, okay. And when you stand on the fence, and I've had counselors come and I've offered them here, when you stand in my backyard, it opens up to the whole bottom part that you're closing off on part of my yard.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, and I'm perfectly happy with coming by to take another look at that and to work with you on that side of things. Marisa, did you have any responses to Erika's comments?
I think I have addressed those.
Okay. Does anyone else at this time have their hand up to speak? We could start going through some of the chat questions as well.
Randy?
Yep.
Can I just, I did notice in the chat that somebody was a little confused. This is not, we're talking to this particular piece of property because that's where the TUP has been done. Council asked and wanted more public consultation with respect to this so they can make that decision as to whether or not they want to issue a TUP for this particular property. So although I did see somebody write that that they felt like this was a done deal, we're talking to this particular piece of property because this is the one that the TUP is at this point in time. And council wants to hear what people have to say in the community. And that's this opportunity right now.
I also wanted to speak. I know that Mary Ellen had a comment about the number of individuals and if that would open up more after COVID. The part of the condition of the permit is it actually places a maximum of 10 residents to the shelter. So that would be in place for the next 3 years potentially. It wouldn't matter if COVID was, eventually gone. The maximum would be 10 residences. Let's move to Shirley hasn't spoken yet. So let's allow Shirley to speak. Shirley, if you could just state your first and last name and give us an idea on where you live, that would be helpful. Shirley?
Hi,
Yeah, we can hear you.
Shirley Zielinski, and I live within 10 blocks. Hello?
Okay, yeah, we can hear you. Thanks, Shirley. Go ahead.
Okay, what I'd really like to address is the fiscal responsibility also of the town to look at what has proven to be inefficient, the inefficiency of temporary emergency shelters for the homeless compared to working under a program by the federal government, which in 2017, they have set aside a huge amount of money, $2.1 billion over 11 years in their budget, so that there's something that's far more effective for homeless people that towns and cities can look at and have looked at, and it's called Housing First, where homeless actually have the dignity of having a locking door, counseling available constantly, people helping also for placing them in employment and getting them on their own 2 feet, and they know they're not going to be booted out. When people are asked to leave homeless shelters for one reason or another, either they're not following the rules, and a lot of these people have a hard time with rules, or the temporary shelter is closing because it's the end of March, they have been proven to get more violent than people who are offered a more permanent housing situation. The funds are there with the federal government now. The taxpayers of every town and city should be asking all levels of government to look at this form of solving a problem rather than having more expensive, less efficient forms like temporary emergency shelters. And it's a cost savings. There's been studies done by three different cities, by Regina, by Victoria, and by Regina, Victoria, and a university. And there's cost savings of nearly $75,000 per person in a homeless situation, because the people don't have to access the justice system nearly as much. They're more content, they feel secure, and they don't have to access the healthcare system nearly as much. They know they're being cared for properly. They know that they have a safe place and they're not going to get booted out. Whereas temporary shelters are very, very ineffective and not very cost efficient. So I'd like our council, our town, even though this program that's proposed, the temporary emergency shelter, I believe is funded by provincial money, so it doesn't really cost the town anything. It costs every single person who's a taxpayer in the town of all of our money, and it's much better that we get the best system possible. That's all I got to say. Bad location.
Thank you, Shirley. We appreciate your comments.
Yeah.
Let's I'm just going to go through a few of the chat questions here, which a couple of them asked about the vicinity that would have been given the notices. So as per our land use procedure bylaw, anyone within 100 meters would have been given the notice. And it was also advertised in the newspaper. So that is per our land use procedure bylaw. Let's also go through a few more here. There's a lot of comments, which is helpful. The chat will actually this will also be recorded, so we can go through all of this. And then also I'd recommend to everyone to fill out the surveys as well online. You can pick up hard copies. You can pick them up for your neighbors and then drop them off at town hall by next week. Let's move to Kim. Hasn't spoken for a little bit here, and she had another follow-up question. Kim?
Hi there. I actually just wrote in there in that chat because I'm not sure if I'm going to say her name right. Is it Marlies? I'm not sure. I apologize if I don't say it correctly. But the numbers that I pulled that from was from November 9th, 2020, regular open council report, and it's on background. And it said, as of December 2019, there are an estimated 50 youth who are provisionally housed and 32 to 40 people who are homeless and living in trailers or vehicles. So that's where I pulled the numbers from. And that's where I was stating and wanting to reference to that I think this is bigger than 8 beds in this church right now, that I think that Oliver should maybe look at something more permanently, and that maybe us as a community can do something that is larger so that we can actually still use Desert Sun, but something that would be more permanent for these people and anything else that as our population grows and gets larger, we can help. That's what I was in reference to.
Thank you, Kim. We appreciate the comment.
Yeah.
All right, Erika, you're up again. Erika?
Oh, sorry.
Okay, go ahead. Thank you.
So my question, my additional question is to the town, actually. I guess it would be addressing that and saying, okay, well, now that we've been revitalizing this part of our area and we've had so many thefts, and we just had one, what was it, last night or the night before, where 2 mountain bikes were stolen. And now when you put a homeless shelter in, that increases the crime by at least 56% when you pull the statistics. And who's going to be responsible for those thefts? How many times do I have to go through my insurance, or, you know, how many times do we have to call the police before this is shut down?
Okay, thank you, Erika. Michael, Michael, you're up again here. Michael, go ahead.
Hey, sorry to bother you again. One of the things I haven't seen here is a long-term plan. We're talking 3 years. So either there's an exit strategy at the end of 3 years, or things are going to change at that point. What is the long-term plan for this facility?
Thank you, Michael. Ms. Cowan, are you able to speak to that a little bit? Just regarding the long-term plan. I know that we applied for the funding we're going to apply for the funding for 3 years, but I'm not sure about the long-term plan and if that's been discussed through the committee meetings.
At this point in time, there has been no discussion with regards to additional social housing or what it is that council would like to do. What they asked for was to look at providing a temporary cold shelter or extreme weather shelter to assist some of the at-risk individuals in our community. So it's something that council would have to determine if they want to go forward and have a permanent facility in this community, or if there's an organization within our community that wants to provide this type of a service.
All right, thank you, Ms. Cowan. I think what we'll do now is just move to Marisa. If you want to just speak again there's quite a few new attendees, I believe, just a little bit about the shelter, sort of a quick inversion, just highlighting what you had highlighted before. And then that'll give the people that are just tuning in a chance to read that as well, and then and listen to that and then provide their comments. I believe you're muted there, Marisa.
There we go. No, I'm unmuted. Yes, so I know that there's a lot of questions about numbers and, you know, how are we going to accommodate 50 people in an 8 or 10 bed shelter? But we have to, I believe that sometimes we have to start somewhere. And, you know, I think that there's also, I saw some questions about what does Desert Sun know about running a shelter. Well, we've started a lot of programs that and the programs and that we've started from scratch have all done extremely well. And so, you know, I believe that sometimes you have to start something, if you don't have the courage to start something and set yourself a goal and learn from others, then you're never going to get somewhere. So, you know, Desert Sun is a local organization that gives us an edge on anyone else from outside of our communities that comes into our community, because we know the people in our communities, we know many of the vulnerable people, we know people who struggle with homelessness. So yes, and we came up with a number of 50 people, because that is how many people we tracked in the last year with the help of social workers, interior health. And like I said before, we none of the people that we helped have struggled with addiction. They just fell on hard times, and you know, so that is why we also want it to be a high barrier shelter, is because we do not typically deal with people who are addicted, and we know that we can't mix people who are suffering from severe mental illness, who have addictions, with people who are not using and people who just fall on hard times. So that is, the number came from ourselves and other other people who work, other agencies who work with homeless people in our community. So, and the age spectrum of these people, you know, they are youth, they were women, they were men, and they were seniors. So they ran the whole gamut. We had people from 17 years old, and we've actually just been dealing with a lady who is 75 years old. So that's the spectrum of people that that we help, and that we deal with. And like I said before, they not all drug addicts. These people are somebody's mother, father, and children. So and you know, currently we never, the sad thing too is we never know when something really bad can happen to us, and we can be in that exact same situation. So we always have the choice. We can look the other way, we can ignore these people, or we can choose to help them and give them a hand up. I don't really like giving people handouts, because I believe then you're really not helping them. So to break the cycle of homelessness, you have to give people tools to navigate the system. You have to help them find a job, and you have to help them navigate the whole housing continuum, because there are you know, homeless shelters. Then there's transitional housing where people start contributing to their own housing, but the housing is still supportive. And then there's independent social housing. So the goal of our staff and this shelter will be to help people along on that continuum of housing. So the dream or the goal of this shelter would be that it will operate during the coldest months of the year, which is from November 1st to March 31st, because we do find that lots of people who struggle with homelessness, they find other accommodation in the summer months. They live in trailers, they live in pickers cabins, but in the wintertime, it's too cold for them to live in this accommodation. So how this whole temporary emergency shelter or cold shelter started was, there was a stakeholder committee, and it consisted of community members, Town of Oliver, and Desert Sun, and that is how the location was decided on, and that's where we are right now, is to look for a permit to operate the shelter at the location that has been proposed, which is the United Church, and that is located at 511 Church Avenue in Oliver. And to operate a temporary or cold shelter, we need a permit from the town of Oliver, from the town council of Oliver. So as I've said before, this is a high barrier shelter. So that means that the shelter will screen applicants for services. So clients have to be homeless and they cannot consume alcohol or drugs on the day of entry or while they're staying in the shelter. Like I said before, they will have a CCAN where they will place their belongings, and that CCAN, the location of the CCAN has been proposed by the town, and everyone will be able who is accessing and living in the shelter will be allowed to store one bag of belongings and one bicycle in the CCAN, and only staff and clients will be able to access the CCAN together. The shelter will be closed, so that means nobody will be able to access the shelter between 10 and 7. There will be no admissions during that time, and so there will be also nobody coming and going to the shelter during that time, and there will be no safe injection site, because I've read on social media that people were speculating that that will be there, and no, it won't. And while clients are in the shelter, it will be the goal of staff to work with clients to set goals for their shelter stay. Staff will work with clients to ensure that they have ID in the province of British Columbia so that they can access income assistance. We will also work with them to try and secure employment, and then also to access long-term housing. They will be provided with 3 meals per day, and they will also have free access to laundry services. There will be no visitors allowed. And as Randy has said just now, there will be 10 beds, but there will only be 8 clients in the shelter at any given time, and 2 beds will be regarded as overflow. And the safety of our staff as well as our clients will be our top priority, just as it currently is at Desert Sun. We will provide 24/7 staffing, and there will be 2 staff members on site at all times. Desert Sun Counseling deal with many vulnerable people in the community of Osoyoos, Oliver, and actually we do people all the way to Rock Creek. And we provide counseling services to men, women, children. We provide parenting programs to parents who struggle with parenting. We provide a community kitchen where we help people with food security. We have a senior bed at home service, which provide help for seniors to help them live independently for as long as possible. We have an affordable housing project. We have a safe home. So we deal with many, and then we also act as a referral center in Oliver, and we also provide outreach work. All of our staff are trained in dealing with vulnerable people. All of our staff are trained in first aid. medical, and also to deal with medical emergency and overdoses. And as I stated before, we believe in training our staff in dealing with ODs, because every day, every month, more people die of overdoses than people that are dying of COVID. So overdoses in the province of British Columbia is a real thing. And overdoses happens in Oliver, happens in Soyuz, happens in every single town. So as a staff and as a citizen, I believe that it's only proper and good practice for us to be trained to deal with these emergency, just like we trained in first aid and being able to help somebody if they have a heart attack. So funding for the staffing of the cold shelter, the rent of the facility, all startup costs, as well as COVID-19 PPE will come from BC Housing. So, and that BC Housing also provides a budget for food. And I know somebody's asked before, so how can you look for a place before you try to secure funding? That is typically how it has to happen, because we have to propose a budget to BC Housing, and for us to be able to propose a budget, we have to know how much is it going to cost to renovate the space that we need, how much is it going to cost to rent the space that we need. So those things we have to have some idea to access funding. So this funding has not been secure, and so we first have to basically go through the process and find a location, whether it's this location or another location, to be able to access funding from BC Housing. So Desert Sun and the town of Oliver staff have been working together to put together terms of reference, as well as come up with policies and procedures for the cold shelter. We've also got, we've been working on a good neighborhood agreement, on shelter rules, on admission forms, and our next step will be to put an advisory committee together, and the advisory committee will work with Desert Sun and will help Desert Sun oversee the operations of the cold shelter, and all the policies, procedures, terms of references will have to be approved by the advisory committee. So yes, and that is about, I believe, what I had to say. Thank you very much, Randy.
Thank you, Marisa. I just wanted to thank everyone for attending, and anyone that's new that has just joined. There is an opportunity for the public to ask questions. The chat's a bit hard to follow because there's a lot of comments, but the best way would be, that being said, sorry, the chat is monitored, so we can review those questions later and forward those on to council. But the best way is to actually virtually raise your hand, which you'd actually click on my screen. It's in the top right corner. If you click on your own name under the attendee list, you can actually click virtually raise hand. And then with that, we'll be able to take your questions. And I do notice that Charmaine Casorso has put up her hand and she has not spoken yet. So we'll allow Charmaine to speak. Just share your address if possible, Charmaine, or your location, just to give council that idea. Charmaine, can you hear us? Oh, just a sec. Sorry, I'm just allowing you to talk here. Charmaine,
Mute now.
are you there?
Okay.
Yeah, we can hear you. We can hear you. Thanks. Go ahead.
Hi. So I did post a question in the comments. I just wanted to know what happens after this meeting. What's the process from here? There's been concerns brought up. There's been other comments and questions. And so what happened? And there's a survey, which I'm going to go find that. So what happens after this?
Thank you, Charmaine. So the idea is we'll provide all of this feedback to council at the December 14th council meeting. Likely a decision would not be made at that point. It'll probably come back to council in the new year, but at the December 14th meeting, we will provide all the feedback and summarize it for council to consider at the next meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, we'll move to Michael Guthrie again. Michael, are you there?
Yeah, sure am. Got a couple of questions for you. One of which is, how are you going to determine a high value client? Is there going to be background checks on potential clients? Your analysis? What are you going to do? Are you just going to let them in the door, or is there going to be a multi-week transition from homelessness to being in the facility? And the other one is a question about this, a multiple horizon financial perspective that I think is necessary to put the people of this community at ease from a financial spot, a comprehensive one. Who's getting what, when, and by whom? Is there one coming? Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Marisa, can you speak to the question about a high value client?
Yes, I'm not sure what a high value client means, but
that's you're the one who used it. Yes, she did. She called them a high value. Okay.
All right, sorry about that. Go ahead, Marisa.
So it's a high barrier shelter. That is the name of the shelter, not the client. So what we normally do is we go through an intake process, and we have a intake questionnaire. So we sit down with the client and we will go through the intake form, ask them the questions. They will answer the questions. At the same time, they will also have to, we will make them aware of their rights. We will make them aware of our rights. We will make them aware of the policies, and we will also make them aware of the shelter and rules, and they will also have to sign the Good Neighborhood Agreement. So we have the same process for our safe home, and that is how we determine if people are suitable or not.
Okay, thank you. Charmaine, did you have a follow-up?
No, that answered my question. Thank you.
Okay, you got to put your hand back down then. I don't know if you know how to do that, but
okay.
Thank
Oh,
you.
there we go.
All right, let's move. Erika has another comment or question. Erika?
Yes, sorry. Thanks, Randy.
No problem.
Okay, so I'm going to follow up on, I think it was Michael's question, where he was talking about the lab testing and how the sobriety of I was going to say patients, the residents are being tested, because I know for a fact there's no point of care approval for that residential. So it would be curious to know how they are going to be deeming somebody for using alcohol or drugs when they come on entry. And if they are deemed as such and they're denied entry, where are those people going then? And they also stated that they'll be offering resources once they're in the shelter. But if you already have an idea of who these people are, because you're saying they live in hotels, pickers, and whatever, picker cabins and whatever else, why are these? What does it even matter if they're in a shelter or not? These resources should be already giving to these I guess, potential residents. So I'm not quite sure why we have to keep saying, oh, there's going to be resources, because if you know these people and they're in our community and you already have access to these people, then these people should be already getting these resources. Thank you.
Thank you, Erika. Marisa, do you have any comments regarding that, or regarding the intake process at all, or?
Well, the intake process, I believe I explained what the intake process will look like. The more detailed screening and the further details to the intake process will be determined by the advisory committee, ourselves, and the town as we move along in this process. And yes, the resources that we do make resources available to anyone who accesses our services, and we do help people already. And we do provide people with other housing. It is just that sometimes we really are stretched and we really cannot find housing for people. And yes, it let me just tell you this, that it's not easy sometimes to go to bed at night and climb in your own bed when you know that somebody today came to your door and was really in need and you couldn't help them. It is not an easy thing to do. So we deal with people like that on a daily basis, myself and staff. And other, social workers in at Interior Health, not a week go by that there's not phone calls back and forth between myself and the social workers, trying to problem solve, trying to navigate, trying to find space for people who need a place to live.
Thank you, Marisa. There's a question that came in from Pamela Jones, I believe. It says, out of curiosity, is there a time limit for each person's stay in women's shelters from 48 hours to 3 weeks generally? And would that apply to this shelter at all?
So there used to be a time limit, and we used to, when I started with Desert Sun, which is now 3 years ago, we used to house women for maximum of 10 days. What we have found in the last year specifically, and since COVID, it's even worse, is that we have nowhere to send these women. So we take them in, they're fleeing abuse, and then we have to try and find them the next stage housing. So, there's just nothing available. So we have had women staying with us for 4 or 5 months now, and who are still staying with us. So that is what we're looking at right now for the women's shelter. Would that be the same for the homeless shelter? Those are policies that the advisory committee will have to look at and have to work through. How do we determine need? Who is going to be top priority? Are we going to work on, okay, so you've had 5 days, so now we have to move on and give somebody else 5 days? Those are things that the advisory committee is going to have to work and on and come up with answers.
Thank you, Marisa. I'm not sure if anyone else has been putting their hands up at all. Erika and Jay have lots to say, so we'll go back to Erika then. Erika?
Sorry, I just wanted her to clarify who is testing the sobriety of these residents. She mentioned that the patient advisory committee would be determining this, but that doesn't sound accurate.
No, not the patient advisor. I said that the advisory committee will come up with what are they going, how are we gonna be clear on the sobriety of the person? Does that involve the drug test? Does that involve the breathalyzer? Those are things that the advisory committee will have to decide on.
So there is no plan right now, is what you're telling me, that there's nothing?
The plan is that it's a high barrier shelter that will be non-negotiable. And obviously, if it's a high barrier shelter, we have to determine how you are going to ensure that people who access the shelter is not high and is not being using and is not under the influence of alcohol.
All right, thank you. Let's try to move to Jay here and see if Jay's connection's better.
Is it, can you hear me now, Randy?
Yeah, so far.
Okay, thank you. I guess I just want to really hold Ms. Tarr's feet to the fire in regards that she said, uses the word high barrier, but she's describing low barrier vulnerability. So a 75-year-old lady will have her ID on her, I guarantee you, because she's getting her OAS and her GIS checks. Taking somebody with alcohol sobriety, and you said that you're going to go clearing them, which is a high barrier, you'll know their background and their history, and you'll have access to your interior health records. And then administering something like a sobriety test, like a breathalyzer, is an illegal instrument that's actually governed by the Criminal Code of Canada and can only be used by people that have been certified as peace officers to utilize it, because it's actually an evidentiary device. So, I mean, if we're doing a high barrier, then high barrier, we're talking about 75-year-old ladies that need help, a gentleman that, you know, he's widowed and he's run out of money. That's high barrier. You're going to have the things. If we're going to talk with the town.
Hey, Jay, we can't quite hear you. It went really well until the end there. So
Which was, we need an emergency room in cold weather. That is where we don't practice prejudice. Concern when we throw flippant remarks around, like we need training because we need to train for a heart attack. Somebody with mental health and opiate addictions, oh my goodness, that is just a slap in their face with what their challenges are, to say that it's just like a heart attack. So I'm trying to stem my frustration with that ignorance. The fact is, we do want a 24/7, 365 shelter. Talking to somebody that doesn't have a house is critical. But you have somebody that comes in for 5 days, 2 weeks at the end of February, potentially from Osoyoos, and they relocate because they're looking for a shelter. And in a week or two, they're on the street in Oliver. That is exactly what Shirley and Michael are talking about, that is going on in the province, and seeing other NPOs sued, seeing their grants pulled, and towns and cities bearing the burden of this issue. So I just want Ms. Tarr to really concretely define that process, and she's the CEO of the process that will bring those people through, because it will be her agency and background that has to be defined specifically for funding and application processes.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that you want to hold my feet to the fire. That's the one thing I heard about who I'm going to allow to the shelter and who I'm not. So I am going to reiterate my position that this is a high barrier shelter. And that means that we will not allow anyone with who are using drugs and alcohol to the shelter. And yes, we, like I have told you, we are dealing with people. I have not had to deal with a person who is using in the last year. And this is the 50 people that I'm referring to who are high on drugs or are using alcohol. The people that I've been dealing with, trying to find housing for, are people who have fallen on hard times. So I don't know what else you want me to, how more clear you want me to be.
thank you, Marisa. I just wanted to point out a couple things about the town's webpage does have the online survey, which you can submit. We're hoping for the deadline will be next Wednesday. There is also hard copies available at the town office, which we will be accepting. And we do apologize that this has to be a Zoom meeting, obviously. We did have a meeting scheduled at the community center for this, but ultimately this is the format that we had to use moving forward. So we appreciate everyone's patience with it. It does look like Jay has one more comment, so we'll give him another opportunity to respond. Thanks.
No, I'm good. Sorry, I just, technical issues on my part. Problem occurs between the keyboard and the chair.
Thanks, Jay. I just want to make sure that everyone has an opportunity for their say. Okay, we can go through some of the chat questions here. I know that there was a few comments about the notice, and I did want in the Local Government Act and in our council land use procedure bylaw for notification. So there was notification of the temporary use permit published in the newspaper on October 29th, which was 11 days prior to the temporary use permit being considered by council. The notices were mailed out on October 27th, which was 13 days prior, and signs were installed on the property. And the letters were sent, as we mentioned, to the property owners. It stated that they needed to pass that on to their tenants. We did drop off in-person notices to the apartment buildings in the area as well. So I did want to make it clear that notice was done as per legislative requirements and as per our land use procedure bylaws. At this time, I'm not seeing any more hands up. I don't know if staff running out of things to say at this time. So, Ms. Cowan, do you have anything to add to the conversation?
No, but I did see Erika's hand up, and then John and Darlene Chapman have their hand up.
Okay, yeah, we'll go to John.
Bailey also.
Okay, that's good. Thank you. We'll go to John and Darlene Chapman. John, are you there? And thank you for logging into Zoom. John, can you hear us? Yeah, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay. Thanks, Randy. I'm going to be on the other side of the fence from many of the speakers here, I think. When I go downtown and I see people around or walk the riverbanks and I see them out in the cold, and it really tears at me when I'm sitting in my cozy home and know that people out there are in cold that I don't want to be outside in for half a minute, and they're having to go through this. And in many cases, no fault of their own. I'm not talking about the ones that most of the people who have been phoning in about, that have got problems that would not fit a residence like this. I'm talking about the people who, through maybe whatever reason, are not able to cope financially or whatever, and they need help. I think a lot of preparation and thought has been put into this plan so far. It seems the only concern is the location. However, if there's no other location can be found, we must move on this and trust the assurances that Maurice and Desert Sun are giving us. Desert Sun, I don't know how many of you have known about them before now, but they have a tremendous record in this community and in the series of providing assistance to other people. They have experience, developed programs. They've earned and built trust in our communities. And if Maurice is saying that that she and the program are going to put people in there who are not going to be a problem to the community and the people, the local neighborhood, I trust her. I think people are throwing up some concerns that don't really, needles and drugs. Those people aren't the people that are going to be this facility is designed for. Thefts, that's happening without any house next door. You are not going to have the high risk people there. As a member of the United Church, we're pro we're approached and asked if we could make room. One of our mission statements, our main mission statement, is to be of help to others, to help the needy, the vulnerable. We've done 25 years of a soup kitchen. And now we have a chance to help out here, and that's why we said yes. I really hope that people give this a chance. Yes, it's going out on the limb and trusting other people. And yes, I live up past the high school, so I'm not right there, but I am there in church whenever or until COVID hit. And now we do meetings by Zoom, or church services by Zoom. I'm not living right there, but I hope that you would trust the system, town council, and Desert Sun. They've got sandalwood going downtown. They've got all these different things that they work quietly and people don't really know about. They do tremendous work. And I would only hope people would trust them and have this open up. And I am certain it will be a success. The amount of planning that's gone in and setting up of this advisory committee to guide and walk through it and make adjustments as need be. If there are concerns, I'm sure, I know that it will be solved. And I truly think that if the neighborhood around the church gives this a chance, that they are going to see, they'll not only see that they accept the people being there, but I think that they will be proud of the fact that they allowed them to come and see such a success that this will be. Am I?
Yep, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chapman.
John.
John.
Okay, Randy. Thanks.
John, just trying to be polite. John, let's move to Bailey Henschke, sorry, and we'll allow her to provide her comments. Bailey, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, go ahead, Bailey, thank you.
Hi, thank you. I just had one question. I was wondering what the results of the original notification were. I know that we all put in whether we supported it or not, and I was just wondering what the majority was.
Thank you, Bailey. If you give me a minute, I could pull up that information and give that to you. But all of your responses were forwarded to council for their consideration at that time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, does anyone else wish to put their hand up virtually and contribute to the conversation? People that haven't spoken yet?
Mary Ellen is on there, and so is Erika.
Okay, here, I'm just trying to, oh, there we go. Mary Ellen, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
It's Mary Ellen and Scott here.
I mean, John, none of us want them outside in the cold. That's not a point. What we want is, it just should not be in anybody's residential neighborhood, period. I mean, that cannot be said enough. I don't know if you've been listening or hearing people. Also, Maraisi, what recourse is there for us if we do see problems once this is implemented? Like, what is going to be done other than us just complaining? Thanks.
Well, there will be a definite complaints process, and we are hoping that members of the community will sit on the advisory committee. And so through those concerns will come to the operations and to the board or the advisory committee through from community members. So there will be a process in place for complaints, and complaints will be addressed for sure.
I mean, these are our concerns. I work with vulnerable people myself. I definitely don't want anybody living outside, and I hate to think that people are. We'd like to help, but we have big concerns about this being in our neighborhood, and we just can't voice that enough.
Thank you, Mary Ellen and Scott, for your contributions to the conversation.
Oh, there. Hello?
Oh, shoot. Shirley, go ahead.
Hi. Just wanted to bring to the attention of anybody who's involved with this also the fact that property values in the few blocks around a temporary shelter devalue a huge amount. And I know a lot of people have bought homes in that area and improved them a lot. And it's just one more case of why the town should be looking at a less populated, less residential area if there has to be a temporary shelter. It has been proven in real estate studies that if it is more of a permanent housing situation, not a shelter, that property values do not depreciate nearly as much. So if there is an area of town where something, we could identify an area where something could be built permanently, even if the town is big enough for that. I don't know if it is, or if we could join together with different communities in the South Okanagan to get the type of housing that benefits the homeless and improves their life and gets them on their feet, rather than once again throwing money at an ineffective and inefficient situation, which the temporary shelters have proven to be. There's something that were used in the past, and everybody is moving on from them now into more permanent solutions. So I don't know why we're even considering this in a town where every day for the last month I've gone out looking for homeless people, and I have found maybe 5. And when asked if they will go into an emergency shelter like this, they say no. They would prefer, honestly, to be in their vehicle or in their own tent where they're in control of their own life and nobody is telling them what to do. They would probably go into a more type of permanent housing situation where they're not feeling pushed or shoved or living under a whole bunch of rules. You have to understand and get into the mentality more of the typical homeless person. And typically they do have substance abuse problems and they have mental health issues, the ones that are staying in homeless shelters. And it's unfortunate that our government's not looking after that in the manner that they should be. That's all I got to say. It's just not a good neighborhood for it. You're causing a huge depreciation in property values. I sold real estate for 30 years. I know what it would, like if I asked a buyer, does he want to buy a house right beside a homeless shelter? Look at anything else, right? And there's more rights than only the rights of the homeless here. There's the rights of the residents. And let's not forget about the very, very important people that pay the taxes so that we can help the homeless in an effective manner. That's it.
Thank you, Shirley. All right, I'm seeing one hand. Erika, do you have more to add?
Yeah, I do. So in regards to Chapman's comments, one, he's a member of the church, so he does have financial gain, but the comment about the Desert Sun, and no one's arguing that Desert Sun doesn't provide, services for the community. Nobody is arguing or is against Desert Sun. And it's not about trusting them. It's trusting this process and their lack of planning right now. And for one, no one's guaranteeing me that my kids are going to be safe. Nobody is saying that the neighborhood is going to be safe. So I'm going to ask again, what is the security plan? I want details. I don't want just to hear that, oh, well, there's going to be a security now, because the first proposal said there wasn't. There was just going to be 2 members of Desert Sun that's going to be there 24/7. Now there's a security plan in, I guess, place because we're mentioning it tonight. So I would like to know the details and how my safety and my kids in the neighborhood is going to be safe.
Thank you, Erika. Marisa, can you comment at all on the current security plan and what's been done on that, and then what the plan is for the future in terms of security?
Actually, Randy, I cannot comment on a specific security plan because we do not have a specific location where the shelter is going to be located at. We're talking about possibly or applying for a permit to use the United Church tonight. And you know, how it works with anything is you start with a framework, and then it's like drawing a picture and then you start coloring it in. So we don't have all the answers. I don't have all the specific details that you think that we should and might have, because I'm only one person, and this shelter is not going to just be run by myself. It's going to be run in partnership with an advisory committee who is also going to have input and say, and to just remind people that there will be a member of the RCMP sitting on the advisory committee. There will be members of Interior Health, the school district. So there'll be a variety of different people in key positions in the town of Oliver sitting on this advisory committee, advising how the shelters should be run. So it's not going to be a one-man show, just like Desert Sun is not a one-man show. We are run by a board of directors. So we are that, and that is how I see the shelter being run. So currently the first step when you're going to do anything is to possibly find a location. So that's what we are in the process of doing. We're exploring, is this a good location? You know, I read a comment just now that I don't have any empathy for the neighbors who live around the United Church. That's not true. I've never said that I'm not empathetic to them. I don't consider their rights to be any less than anyone else's. And that's where what we're doing tonight is exploring if this is a good location for this shelter or not. And it's up to the town it's not myself, it's up to the town to decide if this is a good location or not. The town will make that decision. Once the town has made that decision, we'll move on to the next step, which is, and like I've explained already, at the same time as this process is going on this side, we are also working on the other side to establish an advisory committee to work with us to get all answers to all these questions.
Thank you, Marisa. Let's move to Greg, a new contributor. Greg, if you could just share your last name and your residence, that would be helpful. Go ahead, Greg.
Yep. Hey, can you hear me?
Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, this is Greg Casorso. I live in the Tuckalnoot area. So I just wanted to start off by saying that I think Desert Sun is great, and I fully support the town getting behind a project like this. I don't think the location is appropriate. You know, it being in that residential area. Have we explored, you know, the possibility of using commercial spaces that are right now for lease in the area? And this kind of hits home for me because my teenage daughter, her best friend lives right next door. So once COVID is done, you know, I don't know how comfortable we're going to feel as parents having a temporary shelter in this area. So again, has the commercial spaces been explored in depth? And what has kind of the response been from those commercial property owners?
Thank you, Greg, for the questions. Could you speak a little bit to the other locations that have been explored at this time?
Me?
Yeah, or just in, yeah.
Oh, in general? Okay. So we have reached out. Council did direct us to continue to look for places. And we have reached out to both commercial property owners and also other service clubs. And we're still waiting for replies back from them. As most people know, service clubs only usually have a meeting once a month. So for us to provide them with our proposal, we did send out letters to those service clubs, a couple of service clubs that we felt would possibly be able to accommodate the area that's required, as well as a couple of different property owners. And once I'm hoping that we receive this information back so that we can share it with council at the next council meeting on the 14th. But currently right now, we are still in a holding pattern waiting to hear back from individuals.
Thank you. Kim, you can go ahead and contribute again.
Hi there. I think what I wanted to ask is that now that we have done this venue this evening, since there, I believe that there's a lot of people that may not have been able to get onto this call and to probably be part of it, will there be another chance to have a say in, or will it just be on what was sent out at the beginning of November? Like, will we be sort of voting or whatever again? Or what's going to happen now? Because I don't think there's a lot of people that are able to get with this due to them being seniors and Zoom and that type of thing, right?
For sure. No, thanks for the comment, Kim. That'll be up to council. Council has directed us to do a public information meeting, and this was the best that staff felt we could do at this time to achieve that. As we said, the letter or the information will be on our website, and there'll be an opportunity to drop off the feedback forms. But ultimately, we'll provide the feedback to council on December 14th, and then council will direct staff on the next step in the process.
Okay, so then is there going to be like something posted in the paper or something so that seniors can understand that they can again write in for more feedback?
That's possible. It has been posted in the paper, so we would just have to do that process again. But like I said, we'll be seeking direction from council on the next process in terms of
okay.
if it's.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Kim. All right, we're getting towards 7 o'clock here. I feel that a lot of people have had their say. We could leave it with Erika one last time here, Erika. I see your hand still up. If you did have more to add, I just have to figure out how to. Here we go. Erika, did you want to go ahead one last time?
Yeah, I just this is.
Oh, I believe we lost you there. Erika, you're muted.
Yeah.
Okay, now you're good.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Sorry, what is the rush of why we're doing a Zoom meeting? And like you guys said, this is the best that you can, and I can understand that definitely in these circumstances. But if this isn't going to happen this year, and if she's already talking about Mrs. Tarr is only talking about this being, opened up for the last 2 weeks of March even, why are we even trying to rush this right now? And why are we not getting the community more involved in this decision? Because it doesn't just affect us on the street, which everybody seems in the close proximity to be in this meeting right now and is telling you no. But it does affect like my daughter's friends that are coming over, or somebody else's friends, or, you know, it's the taxpayers, there's a lot more involved than just us. And then you also have like the COVID precautions within the residential. Yeah.
Oh, thanks, Erika. Yeah, and ultimately we'll present the options to council at the December 14th meeting, and as I mentioned, they'll provide direction. They may decide that, you know, the same opinion as yourself, that it's too rushed and that this decision can wait to be decided. So that'll be up to council on December 14th. And we'll just move. It looks like Greg does have another follow-up. So we will end this session as public information. 1 second. There we go. Go ahead, Greg.
Hey, Randy, just to follow up there, Bailey had a question about the results of that. Were you able to pull those up?
Nope, sorry about that.
You're on mute, Randy.
Oh, shoot. Thanks, Greg. No, I wasn't able to pull that up, but there were around 20 submissions from what I can recall, and over half for sure were, you know, did have concerns about the proposal, but yeah, I'm not comfortable confirming those numbers until I look that up. All right, is there any more comments? Looks like Jill, we'll give Jill an opportunity just because we haven't heard from her yet. So go ahead, Jill.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah? Oh.
Sorry, yeah, go ahead, Jill.
Okay, great. I just want to speak to what I would like to consider the people who would be using the shelter. In this conversation as well, like some people have mentioned, you know, do people even want to use the shelter? PowerPoint presentation said there are upwards of 50 people who need
Jill.
shelter in Oliver in any term solution. Molding. Oh, hello.
Hey, Jill, sorry, your connection isn't very strong. Can you? Oh. I'm sorry. I think the best thing to do, Jill, is for you to fill out the survey that we have and just provide your thoughts on there. And as I mentioned, all of this information will be forwarded to council, if that's okay. Okay, Jill?
Yep, sounds good.
Okay, thank you. And
I
just want to thank
the form.
Sorry, Jill, your connection is not good at all. I want to thank everyone for attending and contributing their thoughts. And as mentioned, it'll be on the December 14th agenda, the next step in the process. So thank you to everyone, and I hope everyone has a great evening and stays healthy, of course, and all that stuff. So thanks again. Bye.